If you really want to understand America in the 1980s, you have to step inside the bars and nightclubs that lit up the cities every night. The 80s weren't just about fashion, movies, or big money. They were about nightlife that felt electric, unpredictable, and larger than life. Bars and clubs became places where music, culture, style, and ambition collided. When the sun went down, entire neighborhoods transformed into glowing corridors of neon lights, loud music, and crowds ready to experience something unforgettable. Walking into an 80s nightclub felt like entering another world where the rules were different, where the lights were brighter, the music louder, and people seemed more confident, bold, and expressive than during the daytime. In cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, nightlife defined the rhythm of the decade. One of the most legendary influences was the iconic club Studio 54, which had already become famous by the late 1970s, but continued shaping nightlife culture into the 80s. It set the standard for exclusivity, fashion, and spectacle. People lined up outside, hoping to get past the velvet rope, and inside, celebrities, artists, and socialites danced under dramatic lighting and huge sound systems that filled the entire space with energy. This idea of nightlife as theater spread across the country. Suddenly, going out wasn't just about having a drink. It was about being part of a scene, a moment, a lifestyle that felt glamorous and slightly rebellious. Music was the heartbeat of every club. In the early 80s, disco still influenced dance floors, but it quickly blended with new wave, synth-pop, rock, funk, and the early rise of hip-hop. DJs controlled the atmosphere, reading the crowd and switching records with skill that felt almost magical. Vinyl records spun all night, and when a great track dropped, the entire room moved together like a single organism. Songs by artists like Prince and Madonna filled dance floors, and people didn't just listen, they performed. Dancing became a form of identity, confidence, and self-expression. Los Angeles nightlife had its own flavor, especially along the Sunset Strip, where famous venues like Whiskey A Go Go hosted rock bands and crowds of music fans who came not just to party, but to witness the next big thing in music. These clubs were loud, energetic, and packed with people wearing leather jackets, ripped jeans, and big 80s hairstyles. Live music added intensity to the experience, and some nights felt less like a party and more like a cultural explosion happening in real time. Musicians, actors, and young dreamers filled the rooms, hoping to be discovered or simply to feel part of something exciting. Meanwhile, in Miami, the bar and nightclub scene looked completely different, but equally unforgettable. Neon lights reflected off palm trees and pastel-colored buildings along Ocean Drive. Clubs mixed American dance music with Latin rhythms, creating an atmosphere that felt warm, tropical, and vibrant. People danced salsa, freestyle, and pop music while sipping colorful cocktails. The nightlife often moved between indoor clubs and outdoor spaces, where ocean breezes mixed with the sounds of music and laughter. Miami bars were lively and social, full of energy and style, and the dress code often included bright suits, open shirts, gold jewelry, and confident smiles. What made 1980s bars unique wasn't just the music or the drinks. It was the design. Many clubs were built to impress visually. Neon signs glowed everywhere. Lasers cut through smoke-filled dance floors. Mirrored walls reflected lights and movement, and colorful lighting created a surreal atmosphere. These spaces were designed to stimulate the senses and make people feel like they were part of something futuristic and exciting. When you stepped inside, you immediately knew you were somewhere special. Fashion inside bars and clubs was just as important as the music. People dressed boldly, often taking inspiration from music videos and pop culture. Men wore stylish blazers, leather jackets, and bright shirts, while women experimented with glamorous dresses, bold makeup, and dramatic hairstyles. Shoulder pads, shiny fabrics, and neon accessories were everywhere. In many ways, Nightclubs became runways where people showcased their personality and creativity. Looking good was part of the experience, and the atmosphere encouraged confidence and individuality. Drinks were another big part of the culture. Bars served classic cocktails like martinis, margaritas, rum drinks, and creative mixes that reflected the colorful energy of the decade. Bartenders often became entertainers themselves, flipping bottles and mixing drinks quickly while crowds watched. Happy hours were popular, and many people started their night in smaller neighborhood bars before heading to larger nightclubs later. This routine created a nightlife journey, moving from quiet conversation to full dance floor chaos as the night progressed. But nightlife in the 1980s wasn't only about glamour and fun. Many bars and clubs were places where new cultural movements were born. Hip-hop culture, for example, began spreading from clubs and parties where DJs experimented with beats and scratching techniques. Dance styles evolved on club floors, and people brought their creativity into these spaces. Clubs became incubators of trends that later influenced music, fashion, and even advertising around the world. Another interesting part of 80s nightlife was how social it felt. Unlike today, where people often look at their phones, people in the 1980s interacted directly. Conversations started at the bar, friendships formed on the dance floor, and entire groups of strangers could end up partying together by the end of the night. The environment encouraged connection and spontaneity. You never knew who you might meet or what kind of story the night might create. That unpredictability made nightlife exciting and sometimes a little wild. Of course, some nights could get chaotic. Large crowds, loud music, and the general excitement of the decade sometimes pushed things beyond control. Bouncers managed entrances, and some clubs became famous for strict guest lists or exclusive VIP areas. Being allowed into certain clubs became a symbol of status, and people often dressed and behaved in ways they believed would help them get inside. This added another layer of drama and competition to nightlife culture. As the night went on, clubs became even more energetic. Around midnight, the dance floors were packed, the music louder, and the atmosphere intense. Lights flashed, DJs played their biggest tracks, and people danced like they didn't want the night to end. Many bars stayed open late, and after-parties sometimes continued until sunrise. In cities like New York or Los Angeles, it wasn't unusual for nightlife to last until early morning hours. What makes 1980s bars and nightclubs so fascinating today is how much they shaped culture. The music that played inside those rooms influenced entire generations. The fashion people wore inspired designers and pop culture trends. Even the idea of nightlife as a social performance became part of modern entertainment culture. These spaces captured the spirit of the decade, bold, colorful, expressive, and a little bit wild. When people today look back at the 1980s, they often remember the neon lights, the music, and the energy of the clubs. But what really made those nights special were the people inside them, the dancers, the musicians, the dreamers, and the friends who created unforgettable memories together. Bars and nightclubs weren't just places to spend time. They were environments where people expressed themselves, discovered new music, and felt part of something exciting and alive. So if you imagine stepping into an 80s nightclub, picture glowing neon lights, powerful speakers shaking the floor, stylish crowds dancing under colorful beams of light, and a feeling in the air that anything could happen that night. That was the real atmosphere of bars and nightclubs in 1980s America Crazy Nights. Unforgettable music and a cultural energy that still influences nightlife around the world today.